Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is Jules Louise, who is the wife of Ray Williams, who is a self-professed autogynephile and detransitioner. And she is also a detransitioner, and in this conversation we talk about her struggles with her sexuality and being a lesbian and taking the trans train toward self-fulfillment and then reversing towards self-actualization and honesty, and then her particular relationship with her husband, who's a male, even though she's a lesbian, and he's an autogynephile. You can find my previous interview with Ray Williams linked below, and links to Jules' socials. And if you enjoy this content, consider liking, subscribing, and donating via the tip jars below. Without further ado, here is Jules Louise. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Oh, you have a detransition lizard behind you.
Oh, wow, you're really up to speed on all of the symbology.
Jamie Reed has one and I met her, so.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Probably
actually
got it
have
from the same
one that I
person.
made when I was like 12. It didn't mean anything then. We just made them. I think I'm good. All right. Ray was here. He's helping me set up.
Tell him hi for me.
He says hi. He said hi back.
Yeah. What are you up to?
What am I up to? I was just doing chores today.
Oh, good. Gotta get those knocked out.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you have a hobby that really captures your imagination?
Yeah, I'm a really earthy person. I like
Oh,
composting and soil regeneration.
really?
Like not just gardening, but like soil regeneration.
Okay. Like, so
Make the ground healthier.
you're just into biomes then?
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you have a particular trick to get like the richest dirt possible?
Compost.
Do you have like one of
Compost
those
is the best
churn
thing.
things? Do you just rake it?
No, we took some pallets, some wood pallets, and made like three compartments. And so we start it in one, flip it into the other, and then flip it into the third one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why separate them? Because
Just so
different
you
bacteria
can
are different things, or
have a pile that's ready and a pile that just started
okay,
at the same
yeah,
time.
cool.
Yeah.
Do you garden for eating or for just things that you like looking at?
Hmm. We we try to put food and herbs and stuff in, but we haven't really eaten that much from it. Our backyard started out pretty bad soil, so we dug out like a bunch of rocks and stuff out of the ground first, and then we tried to make it healthier. So hopefully this year we'll grow some real food that we actually
Wow,
eat.
wow, cool.
Yeah.
Where should we start?
Um, Probably and like what I was like as a kid and what got me into thinking about my gender, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I like that. What were you
Yeah.
like as a kid?
Um, yeah, so I didn't fit in with like girly girls that much. I was more into like playing sports and stuff. And I had two brothers, and both my mom and my dad were fairly involved parents. I mean, my dad worked full time, but like after he was home, he like coached my sports teams and stuff. Uh and I like to read a lot. I would be really quiet for like long stretches of time and then just only get vibrant and loud around people I was like really comfortable with.
Hmm.
So, and then I guess I was called like one of those academically gifted kids and everything. And then um yeah. And then in like middle school and high school I was realizing like for real that I was like, same sex attracted and but it took me forever to kind of like accept that. It was one of those things where I didn't really want to be that unless I had to. Not
Hmm.
that I hated the other people or anything, but I just thought like it's
Hmm.
like hard to be that way. And I didn't
Hard
like
to
to
be that
like
way. How? Like you're
well,
same
I
sex attracted, but you don't want to be in a relationship with a woman, or just how it's perceived?
I didn't want to stand out. So like in middle school, only one girl was out. So that would have made me stand out a lot. And in high school, it was still, yeah, it was still, I mean, high school was like mid to late 2000s for me. So, like mid 2000s. So, yeah, it still kind of made people stand out if they came out.
Okay.
And I just didn't like being talked about in the hallways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And what about your friend groups?
Um, So I'm late diagnosed autistic. So if I look back, I can kind of see a lot of classic storylines. Like it's pretty normal for an autistic girl to kind of like switch friends every year almost, or like have a new best friend like periodically, not keep the same friends the whole time. But eventually, like by high school, I found this group of friends that were all like really nerdy and like they didn't really go anywhere. Like we're actually still friends. So
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
mean they live all over the country, but yeah, like we'll get together if we're in the same city or whatever. Um, so that friend group was my final like stable friend group, but I would usually have like one or two or maybe three like really close friends and just kind of have those individual relationships. And I wouldn't always like have a group I was fitting into all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So back then, at that time, there wasn't a prevalence of gay straight associations or pride
We had a gay
groups.
straight alliance at high school, but
Yeah.
like it kind of stuck out. Like you had to be brave to go there. And
Huh.
and like it was important that it was called gay straight alliance then because then when you go, you can say like I'm a straight ally. I'm just going to be like really supportive of people so you didn't have to come out in order to go there.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot of people feel like brave enough to go there. Um but yeah, it was like kind of a fringe group. It wasn't like the cool thing to do or anything.
So your friendship wasn't, your friend group was not defined by a political association or a sexual orientation kind of theme.
Um, no, but towards, well, middle to late part of high school, um, like three or so of my closest friends were all kind of like getting really woke. So I can tell you how we all got introduced to that.
Yeah.
It's a story that I don't hear other people saying very often, other than people I know personally. But there was a summer camp program that our high school would like notify us of and say like if you want to apply, you can. Um, and I did, and my friends did. My friends went the year before me, so they already started kind of indoctrinating me beforehand, and I was all ready for the summer camp program by the time I went. But it was like I'm not using these words like later on changing the words. This is how we described it then, and I describe it now. It was a social justice camp. And we talked about the isms. So they taught us about racism, classism, sexism, and then like I don't know if there's an ism word for this, but like homosexuality and like
Phobia.
gender and
Yeah.
gender.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure those were I think it was five. Those were the
Yeah.
units that we did. And it was like really, really intense. And my year was even worse because there was a director before who I guess was competent at it and was like compassionate and able to like help shepherd the kids through it so that they didn't feel bad. Um, because it's really like psychologically demanding and sort of draining experience to be taught like you're either privileged or you're oppressed on each of these things and that has a lot of meaning and you need to focus on it and all this stuff. It was a lot and I don't think it was healthy. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, but the director that was supposedly good at it had quit before my year. So my year was even worse because there wasn't like a competent person even running it. So any part of it that was liable to like upset the kids was like even more messed up my
Hmm.
year because she couldn't like handle it and run it right. Um, so yeah, we did a lot of activities where we had to like really spill our deepest, darkest like secrets.
Yeah.
Not really exactly like that, but like kind of like uh like take a like there was a gender activity, like take a step forward if you fit in this way, or take a step backwards if you don't fit in this way, or like have had this adverse experience. And then you look across the field at the end and see who's behind you and who's in front of you and how far apart you are. It was wild. And there was like crossing lines, like if you are this identity or if you feel this way or whatever, like cross the line and go stand out there and show everyone. Like it was a lot. Like you were supposed to be honest about all of those things about your life, and like it didn't seem like we really opted into it or were able to say like this is overwhelming. They were just like sit through the discomfort, lean into the discomfort, like stay in the
Mm.
room, like don't make an excuse and get up and go get water or go to the bathroom when you don't need to, because that's like you like not like, participating and doing the work and learning when
Yeah.
you should lean into the discomfort. So I really think that really like indoctrinated me a lot and just made me like social justice warrior and woke like before those terms were ever used by people in a pejorative way.
Yeah.
Um,
How did that manifest in your behavior, your attitude, your mood, even?
yeah. So I got really concerned about gender and whether I was like a gender nonconforming woman or whether I was like transgender in some way. Because like, yeah, I just wasn't exactly like the most feminine, like average type of girl. And so I was like, well, if my brain's sort of different, my behavior's sort of different, like, am I like not in the woman category? And one of the gender activities, they sat us in a circle. They broke us up into like a circle of women, a circle of men, and a room for transgender and questioning people. And I sat in the women's circle, like sort of tentatively, like, is this going to be an okay experience for me? Do I feel like I fit in? And they had like a high schooler sort of run the thing. They trained her, which was a bad part of how they did it. Because she wasn't really competent either. And she started saying things like, yeah, as women, like we all understand each other. Like we just naturally like get each other and know like fit in with each other. And I was like, nope, I'm out. And so I like ran off to the transgender and questioning room. And in that room, the facilitator was an adult, a transgender adult. And he was like, oh, in here, like we're all here to support each other and we all kind of are like misfits and we kind of have hard life and like we're here to support each other and it'll be great to be in a room together and like kind of
Mm.
band together. And I was like, okay, this is great. So but yeah, it was difficult because all of that got mixed in with me just trying to like accept myself as gay and come out as gay and start like living my life in the way that would be like happiest for me. So it was really upsetting and I would like ruminate on it. Like I went off to college after that and I would ruminate on it. Like that was the time when YouTube had all the videos where people were like showing their transition stages, like this is my voice one day on T and all those, this is my voice 1 month on T, like um and also like people online saying like if you are questioning whether or not you're trans, then you're trans because no
Yeah.
one would question it if they weren't. So I couldn't stop ruminating about it. And
Wow.
eventually I just was like, if I can't stop ruminating about it, I have to either like try it, or figure out how to stop ruminating and how to like release it and move
Okay.
on. And I couldn't figure out how to release it. So I just decided to try it and I didn't really like it. It was a really difficult experience to try to like ask everyone to address me differently and see me differently.
Oh wow.
So
So you'd had to stand out, which is against your
yeah.
nature. Yeah.
Yeah, which is
Okay.
against what I like. I like to like not have people talk about me when I'm not like present and stuff. Like I
Yeah.
really would be like, I don't want to be like talked about. I don't want to be, yeah. So yeah, it was really hard because I stuck out. Like I was probably the first and only at first like trans person at my college. Like I was like the trailblazer, and then like other people who were questioning their gender would kind of like cozy up to me to see what my life was like, and then like later come out as trans too.
Okay. Wow. You were like the seed for all the eggs.
Yeah, there may have been like one other person or something around the same time as me, but yeah.
What were you studying in college besides this
I
thought
was at
pattern?
a liberal arts school, but I my major was math.
Oh,
I'm like a
okay.
math and science brain naturally,
Okay.
which is another like male typical, like logical math, science, like all sorts of male typical stuff that I didn't understand, like, were if those were like made me be like not a cisgender woman, or like I was so confused. And like I think that was so unhealthy to
Okay.
tell like children, like, oh, you should be confused, you should focus on this.
How was your relationship to your body, going through puberty and then like
I
getting settled?
was like awkward. Like I didn't talk about it at all. I didn't talk about bodily functions. I didn't talk about my like period when it started, like anything. I just kept it all to myself. And so I just, yeah. Um, I think I had this whole
But did
thing
you
of,
know how to handle it, or you
yeah,
had access to information? Okay, so you weren't
yeah,
doing
yeah,
weird things to
yeah. But I would like
manage to stay
refuse
healthy.
any actual conversation about it. I'd be like, okay, bye.
Okay. And side point, were you connected to the internet at an early age?
Mm,
Was that a source of private information for you, education?
there was Facebook at some point when I was in high school. It started to be a thing for people outside of college.
Yeah.
And there had been MySpace before that, but I didn't really do it that much. Some of my friends blogged on a site called Zanga, but I never really talked about like gender or sexuality or anything like that. It was
Hmm.
more sort of keeping tabs on my friends, and we would write those like cringy statuses like I don't know, like Julia is was like the Facebook setup, and then or like I am was the Facebook setup, and then you have to fill out your status. So they all look cringy now if they ever come back in your memories. Like, I am so upset that I have this homework or whatever. Like, I don't know. They were
Yeah.
like terrible.
Yeah. Well, I ask about the body because if you have a really rich mental life and you're really good with abstraction, I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, like, how does that interact with your
I
gender,
was
and then gender as a
also,
Liz to deal lens with to
yeah.
deal with awkwardness or
Yeah, I was
weirdness?
really upset to like be curvy and be attractive because I was really, really, really terrified of like male violence or like just
Hmm.
being sexualized at all. Like I just really, really hated it. It made me feel like I wasn't in control
Hmm.
of myself.
Was that something you were taught like through feminist studies or proto-feminist studies, or was it
I
something that
think
was
my
just
mom
innate?
was like concerned, like she wanted me to take safety measures, like don't go
Okay.
running by yourself when it's dark out, even though we were in a really safe neighborhood in general,
Hmm.
stuff like that. So I kind of like absorbed all of that and started like freaking out myself, but also like just the way that guys at school like would act and stuff, like
Hmm.
I just really didn't like it. So I wanted to like not be looked at. It was just part
Okay.
of my MO. Like I wanted to not
Yeah.
be looked at. So I really was tempted to masculinize my appearance for that reason too.
So there's a concept of autoandrophilia, and it's kind of a hazy concept because women are difficult to understand, even for scientists. But I wonder, was there an attraction to being a male, or was male like kind of an escape, like like a fortress that you could
Um,
build around you?
it was mostly the fortress thing. But um, yeah, I just thought femininity was weak and masculinity was strong, and I hated like having emotions. If I got sad, I would be
Hmm.
angry that I was sad.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't want to show anyone that I had emotions.
Why? Because they were inconvenient, or?
I don't know. I just wanted to be what I thought was strong.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So I had to like heal that in myself later on as an adult. But yeah, as far as autoandrophilia, I never, I don't really know. Like when I would imagine like myself as a guy, like it would make me happy. Partly like I wanted the testosterone so I would be better at sports and so I would be like stronger and faster if I ever had
Hmm.
anyone like threaten me physically.
Okay.
But I wanted to be like fit and better at sports naturally without having to try so hard. I thought that would be great. And yeah, in like dating type figure area, like I think I did want to be masculine for that as well, but like it what I don't. think that was like the main driving factor or like a very big piece of it, really.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how did you when you go off to college, you have this it sounds like kind of some sort of intrusive thought about gender. You're just gender ruminating. Did you have a
Yeah.
concept? Did you study like gender theory or whatever? Did you have a concept of what gender was, or was it anything that was problematic? It was just something that your excess imaginal thoughts or your worries kind of just got swept up in.
I kind of thought like, is my brain fundamentally more like a male typical brain than a female typical brain? And that bothered me because I was like, I think it is kind
Hmm.
of. And then I also, yeah, I don't I don't really know other than that. Like that was my main thought. Just like, am I naturally more guy-like?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, my college, they by the when I arrived, they had like a group or like a building for LGBT people, and they called it like the queer center. So there were some like really radical figures on staff there who wanted all the students to like basically be radicalized and use queer, like be politicized. Like our identity needed to immediately be politicized. We couldn't just go there and be like, I want to meet other people that are also same sex attracted and socialize with them. Like you go there and you have to go to the queer center, and like politicization was like inherent to it. It
Yeah.
was wild.
What was your first act of smashing the cis heteronormative hegemony?
um I mean, in high school, I already started activism. I like worked toward trying to get like gay marriage passed in my state or nationally. I would like go around and meet politicians and do different stuff. Or
Huh.
um and in high school, I also had a petition with my friend for making restrooms gender neutral, and another petition for making like gender like a protected like characteristic at my high school, which like I had no idea that those had safeguarding implications, which now
Oh
I've
yeah,
learned
that's what I was going to
about.
ask. Did you think through the
No,
implications of this? Okay.
no
Yeah.
one pushed back.
Oh, okay. So you weren't even confronted with like, what the heck are you thinking?
No one said anything like this is what
Huh.
that would mean. Like this
Yeah.
would be the end result. And I was like, just thought it was a good thing.
Did you, before you transitioned or detransitioned, did you start to see the outcome of gender ideology, especially in a political context? Disrupt,
Mm.
dismantle, turn things on the
Oh,
head?
I took a queer studies class also in college. And so there I learned that like queerness was like supposed to mean like subverting norms.
Yeah.
So I would be like, well, I thought queerness was like the fact that my like sexual orientation is unexpected and not really like well integrated into society, so I subvert that norm, and then that I'm like gender nonconforming, and that's less expected and less well integrated into society. So I'm just like naturally subverting norms. And then I was like, I can understand also subverting the norm of like what exactly a family can look like having different family structures. And I was like, that's cool. I can support that. But I was like, what else does it mean? So I was thinking about like subverting every norm. Like, should we just overturn everything that's normal and just make it a free for all? So by the time I took my queer studies class, I was kind of questioning all of that. Like, we had to
Okay.
read Judith Butler and Foucault and all of that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Did you find something actionable to do, or was it just this totalizing worldview where everything's just going to be upended?
Um, Probably totalizing worldview.
Yeah. Did you start to masculinize, like play with your hair, get like a septum piercing or
Yeah,
something?
no piercings. I just like one semester decided to like completely socially transition all at once. So I just cut off my hair, changed my name, changed my pronouns, started like wearing a binder, stuff like that, like
Hmm.
men's clothing, and just started asking everyone to call me my name and pronouns, because back then it was sort of this thing like Well, maybe it is still now, but like sort of like instilled in everyone who's about to socially transition that it's so important to ask everyone to do your pronouns like all the time and to keep trying to get them to get it right all the time. So I just went from like 0 to 100 like that. But I never did medicalize. I thought I was gonna go ask for tea, but I started questioning like before it. And I started realizing like this is really difficult for me because I
Hmm.
don't like having people look at me and notice me when I don't want them to. So I
Huh.
decided to like undo it all before I medicalized.
Was the binder particularly bothersome to you, or were you able to accept that
I had a
pressure?
pretty weird semester, so I didn't even like go out of my room as much as I did other times because I had to like bind and put on all these clothes and stuff. So
You kind of painted
so
yourself
I
into a
didn't
trans
wear it
corner
like
then.
as much as
Yeah.
other people because I wasn't like out of my room like all the hours of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was tough. I had some like alternate things that were like sort of binder-y, but not as bad.
Okay.
But yeah, it I didn't get like after I detransitioned, I was like, oh, did I damage my like tissue? But other than that, I wasn't like I didn't think I really did that much else other than damage my tissue, damage my reputation and my psyche.
Oh, your psyche. Okay. Why? Because you were trying to be something that you aren't?
Um, yeah, I think mostly all this time I spent before I tried it, just being worried about it and like just reflecting inward and worrying about something all the time rather than like going out and making friends and stuff. My first year
Okay.
in college, like I should
Yeah.
have spent that time out making friends, talking to people.
Well, to counter that, there is positive aspects of going inward and doing self reflective work and meditative or contemplative or some sort of spiritual seeking
Hmm.
aspect. And I think it's been my observation that gender to some extent is basically a godless society trying to invent something that takes over that internal soul
Yeah.
seeking and searching. So I wonder if that was kind of what you were doing, more or less. What were you getting out of all of that contemplation, meditation,
Yeah.
consideration?
So I wish that it hadn't been on that topic and that it hadn't been like, is your whole identity and the way you socialize and the way you look like something that you need to change or something
Oh,
that's under question? Because there are a lot of other things I found out about myself much later in life that would have been really helpful. Like I was struggling a lot. So like I didn't know I was autistic. I didn't know I had a chronic illness since I was like 14 is when it started, which actually exacerbates like mental health stuff.
hmm.
It gives me like inflammation in my brain. I have a real doctor who specializes in it, and he said that like it's not just the internet that told me that. Um, so yeah, I had like mental health, physical health stuff going on, and like innate characteristics like autism, and all of that was kind of like not focused on, because I
Yeah.
was focusing on this thing that ultimately to me feels like in retrospect like I was just spinning my wheels for like no reason, like just wasting
Hmm.
my time.
Yeah. Was there any company, either remotely or locally, like any sort of counselor or guide through this, or even a group that would co-ruminate with you, or were you pretty isolated?
Isolated.
Yeah. Did you try reaching out to people to find a?
Um, I had like my couple of friends from high school who were also going through like the same thing.
Hmm.
The ones who also went to that camp. Um, and um, one of them who went to that camp, the third one, he was like recovering from it. Like, and we stopped being friends, I think, because he couldn't stand like having like someone remind him of his old self, and I wasn't recovering from it and moving on. Like he was changing and he was getting more strong in like his own ideas of what the world was. And
Hmm.
yeah, I didn't do that. But I did hang out with like the queer kids like when I could and go to support stuff in terms of like like we had a concert where like a trans guy was like the singer and I like talked to him and um I don't really know what else. Like we had different films that we would watch. They were all kind of like more like queer, not really like trans specifically, but yeah, it was all sort of in that area, that
Hmm.
queer center,
Yeah.
um, and the people that were associated with it. So yeah, I would talk to them. I had one friend who was transitioning like same time as me, and he got like an implant in his arm that was like the permanent birth control, the long-term birth control, and then I think he got testosterone like the year after I was friends with him.
Okay.
But yeah.
In in the domain of the queer community that you were plugged into, was there a place for the romantic or the erotic or the artistic? Was there like desire, attraction, or was there, I mean, was there healthy or
Yeah,
beautiful
I mean,
expressions of that?
oh yeah, like yeah, we would like it was a regular college, like we all lived on campus, and we would like go to parties together and go to dining halls and go to different places, coffee shops, whatever, together and like hang out together. Yeah, it was really great. So yeah.
So there's fun.
Yeah.
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 And did you during that period did you get crushes, fall in love? Did you get an opportunity to do that?
I knew that I was struggling with life, so I would hold back from
Oh,
like full on dating, but I would like sort of kind of date people and
hmm.
stuff. But I
Okay.
was like, I don't want like a full relationship because I know there's something going on that I'm struggling with life. And like, I don't
Hmm.
think I want to put myself into a relationship until I fix that. So yeah,
Was there a turn where you decided to go in a different direction, and what was that?
with relationships,
I mean, with your identity and your struggles with what we're calling
gender.
gender. Yeah.
Yeah. After I tried it for a while and realized that whatever it was I was struggling with was not getting better after socially transitioning and that it was actually just another thing that I found difficult. Um, then I decided like, oh, like, is there a way that I can like undo this and be okay? And I was like, well, I think it's okay to be like a woman and like have a lot of masculinity within me. And I tried to work on like valuing femininity and sort of repairing my relationship with femininity and accepting it within myself. So my first thing was like, oh, like I can just walk around sort of looking average, like grow my hair back out and have everyone use my normal, regular first name and like pronoun me however they're going to based on how I look and like not have to worry about it and just be like an average person who's not trying to be perceived in any particular way. So like the stress is off of me. And then I was like, I can tell people that I'm close to, like that I feel very masculine inside and like feel like valued that they know that about me. So that's how I convinced myself that it was going to be okay to like
Hmm.
undo it. But it was also like a very shameful thing to say like, oh, I was wrong. Like I asked so much of everyone around me and I changed so much and I inspired so many other people to be trans. And now I'm going to undo that. And so I actually took a year off of school and went home and stayed at my parents' house and like grew my hair out and started like trying my old clothes back on and stuff like that.
What was the impetus for this change? So was it a book you read or a realization you had?
It was just because it was so hard. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And I felt like my dad's like concern over the phone when I talked to him and I was like, oh, he's like really concerned about me and like honestly like I hate that usually. Like, I don't want them to be concerned about me, but I was like, you know, if I like undid this, it would be easier for like, I knew I was going home to live with my parents for a year. I was like, it would be easier for me. It would be easier for my parents. Like, I think I could be happy. Like, this
Hmm.
doing this transition wasn't making me happy. It was just difficult.
Hmm.
I mean, some of it was making me happy, but overall, like in the 24/7 scheme of things, like I wasn't doing that well
Yeah.
still, which I hadn't been doing that well beforehand either. But
Yeah. What about your same-sex attraction and your relationship to that? Did that come into view as you backed away from gender?
Yeah, it was just gender was just like a part of all of that, like the queerness. Um yeah, I was always same-sex attracted. Yeah.
Yeah, but you said in high school you were really wary of that because of the social burden.
Yeah, by the end of high school I started coming out. And then
Okay.
by the time I got to college, I was out. And I was like really excited for the queer center.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, at school. So it's
So
really easy to be really politicized because of that social justice camp and then the queer center and the radical staff there.
yeah.
So
And what part of the political stuff stuck with you as you detransitioned?
um like all of it. I don't think I think all I did was try to change my perception of myself and how I walked around in the world. But I think I tried to limit that to myself. Like I think the only thing that changed was like I decided that it was really great to focus on celebrating gender nonconforming people and that every type of person had a mixture of femininity and masculinity and that we should all kind of like look into that and express those parts of ourselves and value both femininity and masculinity no matter what like
Mm.
gender you consider yourself. So that was really the only change. Other than that, I kind of stayed the same. I still believed in all of it. Eventually, so when I first detransitioned, I don't know if there was even like really that word for it, or if I really ran across that much of anything about it. But eventually, like a few years into it, I think I found an online like support group.
Mm.
And in that group, it was for females. And in that group, some of them were writing like really beautiful stuff about like reconnecting with their body and valuing their body and their femininity and all this stuff. And I really appreciated that. But they also wrote that thing about like forgiving yourself and accepting it as part of like what you needed to do in order to get through life. So instead of trying to examine like how did this happen to me, how did I become so upset and waste so much time on this gender thing that ultimately turned out to like not benefit me at all and like not be a journey that I needed to go through. Like how did that happen? Let me look at the causation of that. I didn't do that at all because they were like, just accept that you did it and it's okay and you grew through it and it's okay. So I didn't question any of it.
Hmm. Was
But
that
that did take some of the shame off of me because it was like,
okay?
oh,
Yeah.
you did it for a reason. Like you did it
Yeah.
in order to get through a tough part of life. And so it helped me like be less ashamed. And like, because at first I didn't want to talk about it at all with anyone. I kind of wanted to just like hide my head or just pretend it never happened. Like I deleted like every picture. I deleted every scrap of evidence I could.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, that helped me like get over the shame, but it didn't like make me reflect on like how did this happen to me? Was it a healthy thing to happen to me?
So, are you implying that it wasn't enough just to let it go and move on? Like, there's more work to do. There was something underlying that you needed to bring into the light to better understand yourself, or what?
Yeah, I mean like I I just I just don't think like the whole thing is healthy anymore. Like gender identity ideology, like I've really within the last year like finally broken away from it and I don't think it was healthy at all. I think it's a really unhealthy like rumination type thing for a lot of people. It disconnects you from your body or it disconnects you from
Hmm.
like the sex that you are, like how that person, people of that sex have been treated in society or over history. Like I was disconnected from like women's movements or feminist movements or understanding the history of like how women have been treated or really understanding like the implications of like my biology. I was disconnected from all of that, learning all of that stuff. Like there were feminist classes or like women's studies classes at my college and I totally missed out on that. I didn't learn like what the different waves of feminism were and like why they happened and like how women were treated over time and just what's the history of all this stuff. because I was just focused on my gender. I missed out on all of that. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of people are disconnecting from that. And it's like a shame. Like, we should be able to like understand our biology and understand how that affects us and how that manifests and what it's like in society and also what it was like in society for people with our sexed body in the past. And
Hmm.
like, did they advocate for themselves? Did the laws change? Did the way people were treated change? Like, how did that happen? Like, do we still need to advocate or speak up about things? Like, are things just? Are things going well? Like, people get so disconnected from that, because they're focused on like, I don't think I identify with my sex body.
Okay. So are things just?
um, uh, I, uh, so now that I focus on like material, reality a lot more, I think I'm like a Marxist feminist. So, don't let that scare you. So for me, that's more descriptive of the world, like how I analyze things, than it is prescriptive about what we should do about it. So I think that there are things that are unjust that we need to know about and that we do need to focus on like fixing. Like, I think a lot of women are put into like a disadvantaged position, due to the way capitalism functions. In one way that happens a lot is when they stay home to raise the children and take care of the house and stuff like that. People sometimes call that social reproduction or reproductive labor. And it's like kind of like doing everything behind the scenes to make the worker be able to go to work and bring home money. But then they're dependent upon that relationship with the worker. So that gives the worker all this power because they're the source of the money. And so, like, a woman who stays home with the children shouldn't feel like I either have to go to the workforce and get my own money, or I have to be beholden to another person who may or may not treat me well, or like whatever, may or may not even be capable to continue making money. Like, they get like huge gaps in their resume staying home, and it's like too much pressure to be like, are you going to like be in charge of your own financial stability, or are you going to and like sacrifice like time at home with potentially with children and stuff like that, which is a valuable thing to be with the children, or are you going to like depend on this other person for like basically all of the finances
Hmm.
and then like kind of be disempowered, like you don't have anything on your resume, you don't have like these skills and this experience, you like may or may not, like some people do financial abuse to their partner and like don't give them any money, no spending money, like all the savings and everything is under the person who earned its name and stuff. So like I feel like that's an injustice. I feel like most partnerships are healthy or healthy enough where like that doesn't really come up as a problem, but I do feel like there are a lot of women who are in a partnership where that does make them vulnerable, and it you shouldn't be like uniquely vulnerable just because you chose to like spend your energy laboring in a way that doesn't get like a financial, like there used to be a movement called like wages for housework. I'm not sure if that's a good solution or not, but like just the concept of
Hmm.
like this woman usually, or sometimes not a woman, sometimes a man, are is doing the work at home, like, but they're not earning any like financial economic power for doing that work. So like how do you make sure that like they're able to support themselves, they're able to have an be empowered to like leave if it's a bad situation, if it is an
Hmm.
abusive situation.
Hmm.
So there's stuff like that that's like worth focusing on and trying to fix or think of ideas how to fix it,
Yeah.
which yeah.
Well, you said it's descriptive, not proscriptive, but being a Marxist, it seems like the solution tends to be some sort of state. So the state would tax the man, make him like make less money, and then filter all that money through this bureaucratic apparatus that would leach a bunch of value out of that money and then give that money to the woman.
Uh there's a lot of different types of Marxism. I think I'm like classical Marxist and also
Hmm.
Marxist feminist. So I really focused on studying Marx and Engels, and like the majority, like the vast majority of their work is descriptive, not prescriptive. They didn't
Mm.
really tell us what to do almost ever. They mostly were
Hmm.
like, this is how you analyze history, this is how you analyze the present, and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I didn't really like read or study like Lenin and beyond. So I didn't really like align myself with like a certain solution, but there are people who think that like centralized power, like state power is like a really good solution, like make every like industry like public and run by the state or whatever. But there you can be a Marxist and also not feel that way. There are even people who are leftists who are just like obsessed with like worker co-ops and unions and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Or like small communities and distributed power. Actually, like, Maoism is about like small communities and distributed power. It's also about guerrilla warfare, so that's a whole
Mm.
thing. But
Mm. And Cultural Revolution. Don't forget Cultural Revolution.
Maoism and Mao, I think, are two different things. Like, I don't think Mao did what he wrote. Like, I feel like Maoism is based on what he wrote, and what
Oh,
he did was like just ridiculous. Like, it
okay.
was more centralized state, but what he wrote was like there should be small guerrilla groups like fighting for local control and stuff like
Okay.
that,
Yeah. Yeah,
which
that
is not
works
what he
against.
did.
Yeah, no, that totally works against
Yeah.
right
I
honorable
I
Mao
read
as
a
the
I read a
dictator.
book that kind of like told me about like how and why Mao like wrote all of this stuff and said all of this stuff and basically like portrayed himself dishonestly in order to get power. And
Hmm.
it was from someone whose parents lived there during that time or something like that.
Hmm.
And it really like changed my opinion of the whole thing. It's really
Okay.
fascinating.
Yeah. 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 I mean, the other solution is that, and this is pre-industrial revolution, pre-technological revolution, that the man and the woman, one, lived closer to home, so the bond was much tighter there,
Hmm.
and plus there was a lot more community involvement. The parents were
Yeah.
right there, the church was right there, so there was a code of ethic. There was,
Hmm.
by and large, not a perfect system, but by and large, pressures put on the man to, to treat his woman as an extension of himself and not to swindle or abuse her in that way.
Yeah.
So, in the absence of that, then there is this disparity
Hmm.
that will perpetuate because it's just nature for women to perform that necessary role of maintaining humanity as a
Yeah.
race, and then
And now
men
there's
as
pressure
more
not
outward.
to. Now there's
Yeah.
pressure to be a girl boss and a businesswoman
Yeah.
and to completely sacrifice that other like caring role, that role of like care work. And
Hmm.
I just don't think that's fair. I think they should
Well,
both be options for both men and women. They should both be options.
what post gender? What are your inclinations? Like, what do you feel your role is, and how have you come to discover what your role is in your in your life, just in what you do?
Um, I'm really chronically ill right now. I'm trying to work on that illness that I've actually had since I was 14, apparently, and was a source of a lot of my struggles.
Yeah.
I have like good doctors now, but it's one of those very complex things where like everything I eat or put in my body or put on my body, I could react to. Like it has a huge immune system component, and I'm very
Hmm.
sensitive to way too many things. And if I find any sort of like exacerbating factors or causal factors and kind of like fix those, then I'll be sensitive to less things. But right now, it's kind of like if I eat the wrong thing or I take a supplement or medicine that has different ingredients in it, like
Yeah.
it has the same active ingredient, but they like put other like fillers in it, I could have like the wrong thing and just be like I can get like anaphylaxis, I get like neuroinflammation. So it can be like psychologically, I'm not as stable and well, or it could
Hmm.
be like physically, I'm not as stable and well in several different ways, or it could be both.
Wow.
So it's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure on me to like eat perfectly and notice all the ingredients on things. So it's pretty stressful, but my husband's able to make enough money to support me trying to like get well. And then in the meantime, I'm trying to just like do hobbies and keep busy. And so I'm sort of like the homemaker or whatever, like just naturally, just because I'm not consistent enough in my capabilities to like work like 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. It would be really, really hard for me. It would like make my health harder to fix. So
Hmm.
I wish I could do stuff. I wish I had the choices to be able to like say like do I want a job? What job do I want? Blah blah blah. But right now it's like some days I need to sleep off everything and get my inflammation down,
Hmm.
and some days I'm totally fine. So,
Yeah, wow. I mean,
yeah.
you spoke about gender being like this time sink. It seems like this chronic illness is such a time sink for you.
Yeah, if I wasn't focused on gender then, like my chronic illness was flaring up in college, I could have sought out medical care more if I had felt empowered or like focused on trying to fix that.
Mm.
Like I went into like my face like expanded and like blew up, like I looked crazy, like I had a terrible reaction, and then I had like all these hives and itchiness all the time, and whoever I did see for medical care wasn't really helping that much, but I also didn't pursue it that much. I was like in a different state and didn't
Mm.
really know what how to see doctors or what doctors to see other than like the student health services center, which didn't help that much. So, but I wasn't like proactively trying to fix that, even though it was clearly a problem. So I feel like if I had taken this whole struggle of trying to introspect about my gender off my plate,
Hmm.
I would have been able to maybe like, 10, 15 years ago, work on figuring
Hmm.
out what was wrong with my health.
Well, health aside, where do you imagine you'd want to be? Where is your nature leading you? Would you want to be a girl boss? You want to be a cat mom? You want to be a mom? You want to be a
I
compost queen?
I don't know. I'm honestly like sort of tempted by like those like experimental communes far off in the rural areas that kind
Hmm.
of just, make a little community, and kind of if you have kids or whatever, like that you all kind of like do childcare together and sort of like become like a little family, a little village. Like I'm
Hmm.
tempted by like that lifestyle. We visited one for a weekend and it was awesome. I do
Hmm.
think they wouldn't want people who don't agree with like gender identity ideology, but also at the same time I don't know how that would be like a huge issue. Like I just feel like it would be whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm tempted by that type of stuff. I'm tempted by things where instead of being like a household that feels individual and sort of alienated from community around me, like I want to like make it more collaborative and more community-based lifestyle.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Is
then
there
composting and gardening.
Yeah, and then composting. Yeah, is there a spiritual aspect that has helped you at all, or like a belief, like figuring out like some sort of first principles for you to orient yourself around?
Um, I think that like I don't know who likes or dislikes if I say this, but like I do think that communism as like a worldview is also like good enough to mean that I didn't need to seek like a new type of religion if I was going to leave wokeness behind.
Hmm.
Like it's enough of a worldview. It gives me a lens that I can use to see stuff. I try not to be like beholden to seeing stuff only through a certain lens, but I do feel like it's a very valid lens that I connect with and value like a lot.
Hmm.
Um, but Ray has gotten interested, my husband has gotten interested in Christianity, and sort of as part of him like becoming more like religious or spiritual, he went through like a process where like he looked into evangelical or fundamentalist Christianity and then kind of like exited that and went back to more like progressive Christianity. So that was a bumpy road for us. But
Hmm.
during that process, to sort of connect with him and support him, I said like I'd be willing to like try to explore like my ideas about religion or spirituality. And I sort of like Hinduism, like I sort of believe in reincarnation. Um, and just different stuff like that. But I also am not like so like enveloped in that, needing that. Like I do believe there's probably a spiritual realm. Like I believe other people who say they've had experience with ghosts. Um, not that I have.
Hmm.
But yeah, I believe there's probably reincarnation, there's probably ghosts, but I'm not like that attached to it. I'm more like just trying to notice materialist, like real things that are
Hmm.
happening here and now is more important to me, I think.
Yeah. 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 You made a tweet that was beautiful and, sorry to use this term, problematic, or like there's a lot of tension in it. And we don't have to get into it if you don't want. It was just like this really interesting introspection on your part that you posted online about
Hmm.
your sexuality and your husband's sexuality and how they're kind
Yeah.
of on paper at odds or incompatible, but there's
Hmm.
something about the reality of who you both are that make you correct for each other. I have spoken to Ray about his story, and I've brought it up with him to have you both on if that's a more proper venue. But I just wanted to hear if you feel comfortable, if he's comfortable, hear
No, yeah,
your
I can talk about
side
it.
of
I
it.
check in with him a lot, like, what are
Hmm.
you comfortable sharing? And he's like, well, I'm already sharing like everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
he's very open.
yeah, he's open, that he identifies with AGP, autogynephilia.
Yeah,
For him, it's more like cross-dressing was more like the motivation there, not really like anatomical. So I think there a technical term for that, if that's more specific than AGP, is like transvestic or fetishistic transvestism or something like
yeah.
that. Like fetish related cross-dressing. But yeah, so already being that open, he's kind of like, well, anything that sort of is helpful to share that will help like move the needle forward and help other people like introspect and understand themselves. And like once you understand yourself, you can sort of like behave better in society, like
You
figure
can
out,
manage yourself. Yeah.
yeah, figure out why you want to do certain things and how to manage those impulses, how you want to put those into action or whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, he's already being so open and vulnerable. And because like it was really profound for him when he um I think it was Phil Illy being interviewed by you that
Hmm.
really got us to understand AGP. And it really
Hmm.
made him be like, I really identify with this thing that Phil Illy is describing. This sounds like me. And then he went and like read Phil Illy's book and was like, oh my gosh, I learned so many things about myself and why I am the way I am.
Hmm.
So, and then he was like, it's not fair that the trans community is like gatekeeping like AGP away from people or like denying that it's real, or trying to like subvert that story and be like, that's not the real story. Like, I guess Julia Serrano tried to say, like, flip it all on its head. It's a different story. Like, you have a gender identity, and since you suppress your gender identity, then you become AGP, but you're
Hmm.
not really AGP. You just have to release your gender identity and be gendered properly. And like,
Yeah.
so he would believe that stuff because that was what other people who are like experiencing this gender stuff were saying was true. And so he was like, okay, that's true. But it turns out like all along, like he could have understood himself better. And he's like kind of upset. He's like, that's an injustice. Like that's a travesty. Like everyone should have the opportunity to understand themselves better.
Hmm.
So that's kind of why he's doing all this activism. And I really support that. So he's already really vulnerable. So he said it's like fine if I share more. So now saying that I can get to your question,
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before you get to the question, how did you two meet?
um I had like a best friend that I had met off of Tinder, and I was swiping Tinder on women. And the best friend was a guy. So I was best friends with him. I met him off Tinder. He was a communist and a professor. And I was swiping women and I found this person who like their profile like reminded me a lot of his, like in terms of interests and like intellectual stuff. And I was like, well, he's already my best friend. I love talking to him. So like this profile looks like someone I would totally like vibe with. Like this would be a great person
Hmm.
in my life. Like they could be a real relationship person or a close friend. And so at the time I didn't really want like a serious relationship. So I didn't message that person and they never unmatched me. Um, and by the time I like wanted a real relationship, I was like, I know who I'm messaging on Tinder and went and I was still like matched and I was like, hey. And so we connected. But yeah, my friend who was a communist and a professor like knew Ray and was like vouching for him and they went to school together and stuff. So
Hmm.
but yeah, he was on there on the like women looking for women side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was already like trans, like fully happy with his transition, like not like in any process of changing it. So yeah, we started
And
dating
that
then.
obviously was a no starter for you.
No, I was
Non-starter, yeah.
I didn't stop believing in all this stuff until like a year ago.
Okay. So
So
he was a woman with a penis, and it was a female penis at that.
yeah.
That's how you saw it. And you were a
Um
lesbian, so of course you'd be attracted to him just as
well,
much as a.
I so this does get into your question. So I mean, I think I'm like maybe slightly bisexual, and I do believe in like sexuality and romantic attraction potentially being two different things. Like they don't have to be exactly the same. Like romantic orientation, I believe in that. And I think I'm like bi-romantic, but like only maybe slightly bisexual. But like I feel like with all of this like wokeness and gender stuff and all of these things like all jumbled together with my under like developing my understanding of my sexual orientation and like coming out and all of that stuff and my socializing and everything, like I feel like I internalized this idea that it was the most compassionate and open thing to just be like pansexual and be like anyone's gender and body could change at any moment. Like it's fine. Like if I was dating someone and they like transitioned or changed in some way, like I should still love them because they're still like the same person. And so I think I kind of like felt pressure to be that way, even though I don't think it was like explicitly from external sources that told me I needed to be that way. But I was like, oh, this is the best way to be pansexual. So I didn't really like, so it was sort of like all muddled up. Like I didn't really know like if I was interested in men or not or how much. And like I think in retrospect, like now that I'm in a more safe and secure place in my life and happier and like not mixed up in this like pure ideological viewpoint that I need to see things through and not being allowing these pressures to happen. Like I do think that I'm like much more like towards like there's the Kinsey scale like 0 to 6 and 6 is like absolutely gay. I think I'm like a 5 or 5.5 or something like
Okay.
that. And I
Yeah.
wouldn't have said that before. I would just say like, "Oh, I'm open to anything."
Okay. Because your
But yeah,
sexuality within the ideology of wokeness or social justice, everything's moralized, and so your sexuality is sex is a moral act. So the most moral thing your sexuality can be is to be open to anything.
exactly. Yeah, it
Okay.
was like this strange pressure that wasn't like explicit pressure. Like I didn't
No, it's
have
part
to
of
do
this.
it,
It's part of the
but
moral system that would work itself out.
yeah, yeah. So it all got kind of confused and mixed up, and I didn't really get to like introspect and understand myself in sort of like a
Hmm.
free way. Like I
Okay.
was
Yeah.
within this system that made
By the way.
me
Yeah.
manipulated my thoughts and manipulated how I saw things.
Okay.
So yeah, so
But within that
now I
system,
can see
it
it.
led you to getting to know Ray and
Hmm.
falling into enough love that you've constructed a life together.
The most love ever. Like I'm
Really?
very, very much in love with him. Like very happy. And so like the romantic orientation, I do think I'm bi-romantic. But like sexual orientation wise, I don't know how bi-romantic. Like I don't know if there was a Kinsey scale for that. Maybe I'm still far towards the homo
But you
side
love
or
him,
whatever.
and it
But
doesn't
yeah,
matter that he's a
yeah, we're
man.
like deeply in love. But I did fall in love with him when he was feminized, and I do think that it like has like an effect on someone's psychology, like all the hormones, like being running on like the natural testosterone now like changes his like motivations and
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like it just changes certain things. It
Yeah.
incentivizes other things in his brain and his body. So he was on like estrogen then, so he was like slightly different, more towards behaving like your average like female person or female woman. Um, and also, I think it changes like pheromones. So, like, he
Hmm.
smelled like a woman to me. So I fell in love with him as like basically conceptually and like physically seeming as like a woman, and he's detransitioned. So we're
Yeah.
going through this whole process, this whole like journey.
Yeah.
But I don't mind. Like I think it's worth it. I think it's amazing. And I think like being his like life partner is like really good and really healthy for me. It's been great. So but yeah, I think our sexualities, so AGP is considered like an autosexuality. So he's able to be attracted like not autosexuality, like allosexual, like which is considered more like regular, normal type that you normally talk about, and towards women, but it's not as strong. Like, so he's like predominantly autosexual, predominantly like the AGP cross-dressing type
Which
sexuality.
what do you mean by that? More self-contained sexually, like and
Like it's just naturally more like pleasing or whatever, like more attractive to him to participate in like AGP type sexuality than it would be to participate in like standard straight sexuality that
Mhm.
like has no AGP component at all. And then
Yeah.
I'm more like towards homosexual side. So like our sexualities are like not really matching up in that way, but like we're
Yeah.
just like really good partners anyway. Like we're just like
Hmm.
I don't know, like I love talking to him. I love being around him. Like we're great. And having gone through that journey, now we can like tell our stories, do this advocacy, and try to say, like, there are ways in which this wokeness and gender identity ideology, as it's acting in people's lives now and for the past 10, 20 years, like obscure like you being able to get to know yourself, like prevent you from being able to get to know yourself. And that's not healthy. And like we deserve to be able to get to know ourselves and understand ourselves. So that's why he's like, I want to do advocacy to make people know that it's okay to be AGP.
Hmm.
It's like innate, and like you just have to like figure out how to deal with it and like how you're going to behave and how you're going to conceptualize it. And I'm like, yeah, like that's cool. And I want to do advocacy too, like to talk about like, you don't have to have this narrow worldview where you're focused on like privilege and oppression and you're focused on all these things that like distort things and
Hmm.
motivate you to do things in certain ways that aren't always healthy. And like
Hmm.
you can break free from that. And then there are benefits to breaking free from that. So we wouldn't be in this position to do this amazing stuff if we weren't together. And it's just like the healthiest relationship. Like I can't imagine anything
Is
better.
is it at all a sacrifice for you to not be fulfilled sexually or to have your homosexuality not
I
being
don't
gratified?
know. I think I'm okay. Like I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I do think like for other women in the future, like I would try to advocate for the conditions to be such that they can like understand themselves and come to terms with like are you like where are you on the Kinsey scale? Like, are you extremely homosexual? Are you like there's something called like compulsory heterosexuality, and it's basically the concept of like women grow up like thinking it's right to be heterosexual, and so they find it harder to disidentify with that. So they'll even
Hmm.
like stick around thinking like I like men and women like for way longer than they like need to. I'm not sure if that's like 100% the best like way to think about all that stuff, but
I mean, it's not exactly flattering to women to observe that they tend to be the moral foot soldiers of whatever moral framework they end up being in, and that's why you have so many women forwarding this really radical trans rights movement that is doing incredible harms to children. I mean, just if you look at the data and the kind of the surgical and the medical interventions that are being foisted upon children in the sake in the name of this gender ideology. It's a lot of women doing that, even though it seems like there's a lot of men getting away or getting a lot of benefit out of that. There's a lot of women in that. And then if you think of the church lady, you think of like this kind of this archetype of the woman being the moral busybody and policing everybody's behavior. That's kind of just a role or an archetype that women tend to manifest. And it's not necessarily a flattering um, thing to point out and to see.
yeah, I have a thought about that. Is it going to take us off topic or is it okay?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So I heard the term empathy trap,
Hmm.
um, or weaponized empathy.
Yeah,
And apparently,
like
like,
Robin DiAngelo or any
no, I
number
don't
of.
think so.
You
No,
don't think so?
no, uh-uh.
She uses that. She
Oh,
uses
really?
empathetic Kafka traps for sure. Yeah, I
Oh, you
mean,
mean
yeah.
that she does that to people? I thought you meant that she educates us about that term and that phenomenon.
No,
Yeah,
she practices that rather
yeah.
explicitly.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably true. Yes. Yeah, so I think the term empathy trap, there's a book about it, and the author says that the person who's setting the empathy trap is probably like narcissistic or sociopathic or psychopathic or something like that. And I
Hmm.
don't think that's true, but I still think the term is the best term to use when we're talking about like that pressure, like this is the empathetic thing to do, you need to do it, and then you go maybe against your nature, you don't understand why you're doing it, but you're doing it because you were told that that's the empathetic thing, so you're sort of being like pushed into doing these things, manipulated into doing these things, and you start to believe it, like, oh, trans people are super oppressed, the empathetic thing to do is to do everything you can to support them and believe them and never question anything or say anything or worry about any other person and how it's impacting them. Only the trans people because they're the most oppressed. And so people get like empathy trapped into this. Like I think I was. And then when you are and you believe all of that, then you start empathy trapping everyone else into it. So it's like empathy traps all the way down.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's part of how it spreads and how
But
people are pressured into it.
it seems to be the case that you are particularly empathetic and able
Mm-hmm.
to weigh your needs with that with whom you love or that which you love. And before Ray, or up until a year ago, with the whole what do you call it, pansexuality, it sounded like it was a moral expression of empathy. I will
Yeah.
love you however you need me to be, to love you, because that's my role, is
Yeah.
to be a lover. So it I can hear some comments. I don't think this. I'm wary because it sounds a little rude to say, but I want to bring up just to test the
It's
waters.
okay.
Could it be the case that you are empathy trapped into a relationship with a autogynephile
That I
who's
was empathy trapped into a
well, I
relationship with an
mean,
autographer.
yeah, I mean, and I'm perceiving there's a lot of really anti autogynephiles that are like kind of like a snap off subgroup of the turfs called, they're called GC ultras, and they
Oh
just
boy.
really dislike autogynephiles. They think that they are that the autogynephile is entrapping women in participating in this
Hmm.
fetish by exposing them to him dressing up
Hmm.
in female attire. So they would come off and say that you're probably, I can hear this, I don't believe this, but I can say that you are gaslit into suppressing your sexuality to perform an empathy trap mimicry of a relationship with a man.
Well, I think the thing that a lot of people miss is that when a male is on hormones, they do come across differently. They behave differently. They have different pheromones. Like it really is sort of a different feeling. And I've heard another
Hmm.
woman who considers herself bisexual and also sort of like not into gender identity ideology describe it too. Like if she comes across trans people, like trans women, and is considering whether or not she's attracted to them, they're more towards like she thinks her bisexuality, there's like a different sense into which you relate with men versus a different sense and like different feeling, different whatever
Yeah.
that you relate with
Vibe.
women.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a different vibe when you're attracted to one or attracted to the other. And she said like the trans women come off more as the woman, like it feels more that way. And I'm like, that's how it was to me too. Like the psychology is impacted by the hormones, the pheromones, like the physical
So
physiology is impacted by
you guys synced
hormones.
up well, like personality wise, behavior wise.
Hmm.
But when he goes from being estrogenized or feminized into a more masculinized, how do you deal with the shift in your, attraction tectonics?
I'm not sure. That's in process dealing
Yeah.
with
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
But I'm still very much romantically in love and very happy with my life. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm very happy. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
just like physical stuff is has to sort of be worked out if you go through a transformation like that.
Hmm. Yeah. There are women I've spoke to. Not too many. There's a rising number of people called trans widows who are women
Hmm.
whose husband transitioned pretty much out of the blue sometime in the 40s, which is kind of
Hmm.
typical of the AGP
Hmm.
plot arc or life arc. And then so these women feel left behind. They were attracted to a man, the man feminized, and they're like, I'm not a lesbian. And then the to one degree or another, the man can tend to display highly narcissistic traits and then demands all these concessions to his identity, up to and including convincing the children that he gave birth to them. Yeah, I've heard that that's can be the case. You're part of a group that will be a growing part of a group of women who fell in love while the man was transitioned to one degree or another, whether socially or hormonally or surgically, and then that man detransitions either because it's too much stress, it doesn't really align with the honesty in his nature, or it's just too expensive, or he doesn't want to be hooked up to a medical system, and then
Hmm.
that man detransitions, and then you're like, okay, so there's this whole other shift in our attraction, which is natural. The pheromones,
Hmm.
you bring up pheromones, it's really hard to be in a relationship that there isn't that kind of really easy desire that's going back and forth. You
Hmm.
can, however, form a relationship around that. There's possibility of forming a relationship, and the relationship can become stronger without that component. But it is something that is, it'll be front and center and stuff. So as you go through this process, I think documenting this and however you do, or commenting on this however you do, will provide, you talk about self-knowledge, will provide more self-knowledge, more resources for other women who will be going through this.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, Yeah, and the trans widow phenomenon is actually something that Ray wants his activism to help prevent because he thinks like if a male is already aware that they're an autogynephile, then when they enter a relationship with any woman or whoever they're entering a relationship with, they can like explain like this is who I am, like do you consent to being in a relationship with me? Do we connect on that level? Do you accept that?
Hmm.
And so they don't like spring it on someone. They don't like repress, believe the trans community that AGP is not a real thing, repress it, and then 20 years later be like, oh, by the way, I'm gonna transition all of a sudden. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it
Yeah.
is, it is, I have heard like it can be like a really difficult experience, and there can be like self-centeredness and narcissism on the part of the AGP at that point. But if they're self-aware, especially earlier in life, then a lot of that could be prevented. So
Yeah.
he's hoping to help with that. But yeah, for me, it's also easier, I think, for me than for a trans widow because he's lacking that narcissistic or self-centered aspect. He's really self-sacrificing and really compassionate. And also like he's moving towards being more self-aware, more truthful, more open, like trying to match his life up to like reality and like, not alter anything or whatever. So it's like I see it as more like a noble pursuit rather than like a
Hmm.
selfish thing that was sprung upon me that I didn't expect.
Yeah.
And we kind of like went through it together, like sort of learning about, do you want to hear how we became more less indoctrinated?
Yeah. Didn't you guys like dogpile Catherine's stock? Wasn't there something about that?
Oh,
Or we don't want to get into that?
that's
Okay.
unrelated.
Okay.
It was just when he was trans, he had like said some tweets about her that weren't good. And it was while she was going through all the
Mm,
abusive cancellation stuff. And
yeah.
so now that he's detrans, he tweeted something like complimenting her book, saying like this book has been really helpful and interesting. And I think he tagged her and she said like, oh, I recognize you, like you've said some bad stuff about me, I'm
Yeah.
gonna block you and call you out. And he was like, oh my god, like I am so sorry, like I have to like beg for forgiveness for any
Mm,
like
mm,
like unhealthy stuff I said in the past when I was like in the
yeah.
ideology. So that was like a big, it blew up on Twitter. But yeah, what was I going to say though? Oh yeah,
Just
how we
your
left the
journey.
ideology. So
Yeah.
that was after he was already detransitioning, but um basically there's like political stuff going on where they're talking about transgender healthcare in like legislatures and stuff in the United States,
Yeah.
where I live. And so we had one of our close loved ones was sort of more newly out as non-binary, and so was like very emotionally and psychologically invested in this and
Mm.
was like extremely distressed and upset by the political debate or whatever. And I was sort of feeling my empathy sort of was coming to the point where I was like, okay, well, I sort of like desisted. That's sort of a powerful story, or detransition socially, whatever, sort of a powerful story to say I went through that and yet I still support trans rights. So if this person is being so negatively impacted by this, I feel like I should go look into all this stuff. So I started listening to Gender a Wider Lens and watching like your interviews with detransitioners and probably several other things I exposed myself to, but those were probably the most influential ones. And I just sort of like realized like actually like I can't go testify in favor of like puberty blockers for 12-year-olds because I don't agree with this stuff now that I've opened myself up and been willing to look at it and learn about it. I don't agree. So that's how we like left, is like I was incentivized to look at it because I was trying to be like, fine, I'll go through this, I'll look at, you know, the facts and the reasoning behind all of this, and then I'll be able to support these people in our lives who are trans by going to the legislature and telling them to allow all this medical care. And when I did look at it, I was like, no, I can't do that. I don't agree with it. And I started to like it it did feel like leaving a cult or becoming like leaving an indoctrinated
And how was Ray
ideology.
when he started to interact with you, interacting with this media?
I didn't push it, but I didn't hide that I was watching all this stuff. So I was like, well, I'm exposing myself to like these interesting stories and facts about gender. And I was like, do you want to watch this one with me? Or do you want to listen to this one with me? Or can I like send you one that's interesting and you do it on your own? And so he just started kind of picking up the ball. The ball started rolling, especially when he found the Phil Illy interview.
Mm.
But even before that, like I think Gender a Wider Lens was the most accessible because you can tell they're compassionate. They're trying to get facts, you know,
Yeah.
they're not like motivated by some nefarious thing. Like they're just trying to be helpful. And so you can kind of tell. So even when you are like in or near the trans community or care about it, like you can listen to Gender a Wider Lens and be like, they're not being offensive, they're not being hateful. So that kind of like ramped up and ramped up. And then finally we got to a point where we were more comfortable like discussing it. Um, but between the two of us, we kind of have this thing. We've always had this thing where like any question or thought or idea that might be like considered bad or offensive, like outside of our house, it's like safe between the two of us to ask it and bring it up. So I
Yeah.
could say like the craziest, wildest thing and be like, I think I believe this now. And instead of him being like, that's terrible, he would be like, oh, let's talk about it. And so we had that as like our like rule, like that's how we are. So it was easier because we already had that relationship established where we could always bring stuff up.
Yeah.
So even though it's like a really fraught, difficult, emotional issue to bring up when
Wow.
you're not sure how you feel about it and you've been around trans people for a long time and all that stuff, and he was still trans, like we made that and we made it there. It was a slow process at first, and then it just more and more and more.
That's that that could have been potentially relationship ending, but because it wasn't, it's a kind of very beautiful process that you guys got to share of like changing both people changing their minds and going through that together. I mean, what a mark
Yeah.
on your friendship, a
Yeah.
positive mark, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm happy. Like, I know that I say like our sexualities sort of are like not ideally compatible if you were trying to line us up on paper, and
Yeah.
that like sort of being indoctrinated into wokeism and gender identity ideology sort of got us to the point where we didn't see that coming. We didn't know that. We didn't understand that about ourselves. but I'm also very happy we're at this point because like it's just yeah, I just love it. Like
Hmm.
we wouldn't have been able to like unindoctrinate ourselves. We wouldn't be able to like do any of this stuff. Like we try to be free thinkers here. Like we're so supportive, we're so open. So
Well,
it's fine. It's okay. Like I love
yeah,
it. But I
yeah.
do think other people should be given the opportunity to understand their sexualities like freely without ideological influences when they're younger.
Are you aware of the Canadian psychologist? He kind of had a dust up a few years ago around the issue of pronouns in Canada. His name's Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Yeah. He has a podcast or a YouTube channel.
hmm
It's rather successful, much more
hmm
successful than my little podunk corner shop podcast. But who's looking at metrics anyways? He said something a couple weeks ago that kind of stirred up some crap online because he said he is not sure that lesbians even exist. It's like the data's just not out there.
I saw
Um,
I saw Eva Kurlova tweet Jordan Peterson doesn't believe I exist, but I believe in him or something like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh, it was a good moment.
yeah.
I didn't
What's your
watch the
take
clip
on
where he
that?
said that.
What's your take
Um,
on just the ability for you to be flexible with your sexuality?
oh, like did he say that like bisexual women exist but lesbians don't? Or did he not say?
I think there's a consensus among the sexologists, the people who study sexuality, that female sexuality is much less hard coded than male sexuality. Male sexuality, it's easier to measure,
hmm
literally,
Yeah.
because of the mode of its expression. That's a penis joke. I don't know if you got that or not, but
Okay.
yeah, but female sexuality, it's more relational, it's more interdependent, it's much more contextual, it's much more fluid. It's much more, yeah, I think I'm just going to repeat a bunch of words, relational.
Yeah. hmm
Whereas male, like with the AGP, with the heterosexual, with the homosexual, male sexuality gets coded and tends to have it tends to get locked on and it's very
hmm
object oriented. And the object is male, it's female, or it's oneself as a female. And then there's a bunch of different paraphilias that are associated with that are really hard coded. Females don't tend to have as many paraphilias. As
hmm
many
hmm
fetishes. There's kind of like this light, loose, hazy kind of like bisexual, kind of lesbian, and then the heterosexual, and then, but there's, depending on the context, a woman can go this way or that way in certain contexts and stuff. So I'm just wondering if that is hold true for you and what you understand about just sexuality from your particular point of view of being attracted to women, but being able to be in a loving, fruitful relationship with the man whose sexuality is also in this kind of, it's a
Yeah.
paraphilia. It's not a standard. It's not
Yeah.
reproductively viable unless he
hmm
expresses it or manages it properly.
hmm Yeah. Um, I think that there are several things about me that indicate that I was probably like exposed to whatever
Testosterone. Yeah.
more testosterone in the womb at one point
Yeah.
than a lot of the average female
Do you have
was or something like that.
endometriosis or
Mm-mm.
anything like that? Okay.
No, I
Yeah.
don't think I have the health conditions that go with that necessarily,
Yeah.
but I
It's
think
like autism.
autism,
Yeah.
yeah, autism, just being generally gender nonconforming and like masculine in nature or like a certain level of masculinity in nature, like the science and math brain,
Yeah. The
logic,
dirt, the snakes and snails and puppy dog tails kind of thing.
yeah, and autism is like automatically includes like some orientation toward objects rather than other people, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if it always does for everyone. But yeah, I think
Be more abstractive, more, I mean, the
yeah.
word comes from auto.
Yeah.
The same word as idiot. It's just
Self.
kind of like
hmm
idiomatic, very kind of
Yeah.
self
Yeah.
obsessed or concerned, I guess.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you
Um
seem like incredibly sympathetic, incredibly
yeah,
empathetic.
I think there's a female typical type of autism that has for like emotional sensitivity has like
Hmm.
extremely high sensitivity instead of extremely low. So I used
Hmm.
to date an autistic guy, and he had alexithymia, which means he can't tell what emotions he's having. Like I would literally have to tell him, I think that you're upset right now. And he would be like, really?
Yeah.
And he also had to puzzle out other people's like faces and try to be like, that looks like a happy face and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like he had a lot of trouble with that. Whereas like I am extremely high sensitivity, um, emotionally, like to the point where it's like a little bit crippling, a little bit disabling.
You walk into a room and you can sense all the like the force fields going on, like you.
Just like I can cry easier,
Yeah.
stuff like
To
that that can
insurance
be
commercials
really,
and stuff.
I
Yeah.
can, it can be really disruptive.
Hmm.
I can't take it when people say certain things to me, especially if like my illness is flaring up and I have a lot of neuroinflammation that causes my psychological like symptoms to be bigger.
Hmm.
So like someone might say something like strong but not mean, like don't record the show with your camera, put your camera down, you can't record the show here. And I, instead of like, I know logically like, oh okay, they're just telling me the rule, I shouldn't do it. But if I'm having like a bad day, I'll get like so upset I can't avoid crying, and I'll be like, oh my god, I'm so embarrassed, I can't even like be in public, like
You're slightly tearing up even now just recounting
just
this
thinking about it,
hypothetical. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I have like the high emotionality,
Yeah.
sensitivity, empathy thing,
So
and
that makes
that's a
perfect
type of
sense. That
autism.
that would make a lot of sense of what you said earlier about being really wary of being a female, because it's not just like you're weak, but you are obliterated by strength, right? Like
Hmm.
you need some kind of barrier or
Softness, yeah,
yeah.
protection,
So
yeah.
how have you? We didn't really get into this. How did you make peace with your femininity? How did you make peace with being sensitive, or at least find so-called coping mechanisms?
I think I started to just kind of look back at my childhood and sort of identify like how not valuing femininity sort of exacerbated my like disconnecting from other girls and stuff like that, where like if I can value myself as different but still a woman and feel like okay, like I fit in because I say I do and because I can, like that's okay for me to fit in as a woman, then I started to be like, well, like um why did I have this sort of conflict or mismatch with other girls? And I was like, well, I think I had sort of like a prejudice against them, like I was sort of misogynistic towards myself and other girls, like that's not cool, I want to heal that. So like thinking I already thought like, oh, I'm a feminist and oh, I'm woke, so of course I didn't want to be misogynistic once I finally recognized it. So
Yeah,
I worked on it then.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I had to be like, it's okay to have emotions and go through all of that healing too.
yeah.
Yeah, I did go to some like therapy and stuff, but I'm not sure how much they helped with the it's okay to have emotions thing. I seem to have therapists that like just didn't really click with me or something. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah.
So you're with a man whose sexuality, so called, is expressed through feminization in one point, in one form or another. He posted a picture of himself in makeup the other day,
Hmm.
where this is a part of his self expression. It's a part of something that he enjoys. He gets enjoyment from. When I spoke with him, he spoke about having to manage that because it can be a way of shutting himself off from being with you, because it becomes very self-involved if he indulges in that. I'm wondering, from your point of view of coming from wrestling with femininity, to watch him express himself that way, how has that allowed you to express yourself, express your femininity, and in the way you walk, and the way you dress, and the way that you concern yourself with houseplants? I don't know. There's these. It sounds really, it is really shallow and stereotypical. Femininity and masculinity are, but there's a truth, I believe, in being beautiful, in wanting to be beautiful, and accepting that as part of your nature, to a greater or lesser degree. I'm wondering how you've, not just grown your hair out to fit into the world as a woman, but because it's something that you feel comfortable doing, that it's a good expression of yourself.
So actually, it's the other way. So when we're working on him integrating his femininity in a healthy way and finding ways to express it that feel comfortable and good for him, I'm feeling more empowered to lean into like the stuff that I like and the ways that
Hmm.
I want to look and express more like masculinity and be more like stereotypical like gay girl look.
Like what? Like butch out? You butch up? What do you do?
Yeah, just slightly. I got my rainbow rings now.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, like I didn't have a creative haircut before. You can't really see it, but like it's a little bit more creative now. I was gonna cut it off, like I had it cut off a few years ago, but
Hmm.
I decided to do something creative. But yeah, I would normally wear boring stuff and just kind of like whatever anyone gave to me, whatever anyone had
Hmm.
somehow wound up in my hands. Like I didn't even buy most of my clothes for myself. Like my mom would be like, "Here, I cleaned out my closet" and stuff like that. So I would just kind of wear whatever was comfortable because I'm autistic. I have sensory stuff. Like I can't have
Yeah.
stuff touch
Okay.
my neck, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate if I want to look like my masculine personality and express it. Like wear a t-shirt.
Wear a
Like I
choker. Oh, a neck.
I
Okay.
can't
Yeah.
no, I can't have like a collar up here, like a regular t-shirt.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
it
You
makes
need to
for a
go
bad day.
V neck.
Yeah.
Okay.
So but yeah, so it's I've kind of been leaning into like, oh, like I'm free to like buy the clothes that I like and throw out these other ones that are like just not my style and stuff like that. Like I've just on the beginning of that journey. And
Hmm.
he's just kind of on the beginning of the journey of like how to integrate some femininity. Like, do I paint my nails? Do I wear makeup? Like, so we're kind of both working on sort of that type of thing. Yeah,
Hmm.
like
How
expressing
does it,
ourselves.
yeah, how does it make you feel to project a more masculinity or more butchiness? If that I've been
It
bringing that word up. So,
makes me feel better. Like I'm not just like before it felt like I just wasn't taking care of my appearance. Like even if I was trying to wear nice clothes or whatever, it just didn't feel like I was doing stuff that felt good for me. So it felt like I wasn't taking care of my appearance. Like I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel that happy about it. So yeah, it's just makes me feel more comfortable and authentic in the way that I look and express myself.
hmm.
Feels nice. So yeah, there was a question earlier I didn't answer. We went off on a
Good
tangent.
memory.
It
Yeah.
was about well, it's because one I've been interested in lately too. It was about the female sexuality,
Yeah.
and whether it's whether lesbians are real, according to Jordan Peterson. That's a good question. Um, it's not a good question. Um, I think I must have been exposed to like some period of time, like had a little extra testosterone exposure in the womb or something like that, because of all the characteristics I listed. But also like so I think I was looking into research about this lately because Ray has been told also about how like female sexuality is like fluid and all this stuff. And I was like, well, mine's not. Like, excuse you. So I was like,
Hmm.
how do I show that like it's not just me? Like, do I see that the other people have this experience? Is there research on it? So I've been looking it up and um the people who are towards like the gay side of the Kinsey scale or whatever do have like more male typical sexuality in terms of like they are more attracted to the sex they say they're attracted to. Like a female body will still like physiologically respond to both, but like if a woman self-identified as gay and then went and got these measurements taken, the paper that I saw, I think it's like only one that did an adequate job of researching this in this way, but like um the paper that I saw, the people who were like I'm gay, like they would still have some response to the male, but they would consistently have like a higher response or consistently have a lower response to the male, I think it was. And like this is like I don't think they had like a higher response to the female, but like the response to the male was consistently lower. And so I'm just like I think my sexuality like can be a little bit more male typical than like I think that discussion about like women's sexuality is tends to be fluid. There's a lot of fluidity is centered around like straight women. Like that's a description of straight women and like gender conforming women. but that's
Hmm.
not really a description of me. Like if my sexuality was mutable or fluid, I never would have accepted myself as gay. Like I had to, I was forced to, like because I was confronted over and over again with like falling in love with women until I finally
Okay.
was like, I'm so deeply in love with this woman that I can no longer deny it. Like it's
Okay.
messed up,
Yeah.
like I had
Okay.
to. So to me, like I think I was
Hmm.
like literally I didn't used to think this because I thought it was problematic, but I think I was like born this way. Like I remember all the way back to preschool being attracted to the girls, like getting crushes on the girls, being more interested in the girls and not the boys. And then like being like when I learned like a girl is supposed to feel that way about boys, then I would like spin stories in my head like, oh, I have a crush on that boy and like try to focus on it, but like that would be just me trying to be normal,
Hmm.
but it would be covering up the fact that I actually had a crush on this girl. And I like couldn't stop like thinking about how awesome she was. So even like preschool, I was like, oh, these girls are so awesome. And I didn't feel that way about boys. Like, elementary school, like, oh, these girls are so awesome. And I would just like spin stories in my head, like, oh, I have a crush on that boy. But like I probably usually didn't.
Hmm.
So by the time I finally got to high school and I was falling deeply in love with women, I was like, I can't deny this anymore. It's crazy to deny this. Like, I
Hmm.
have to come out. I have
Yeah.
to accept it. Like, I had like internalized homophobia where like I really didn't want to be gay. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't even have externalized homophobia against other people. I was like, oh, I want to be friends with gay people. But I was also like, I don't want to be gay.
Yeah. I'm wondering, this
So
is a completely different topic, but I wonder if such a thing as FOMOphobia exists, where you have a fear of missing out on life. But that's a
I'm
whole
not
other.
even sure if I understood that.
Never mind. Totally bad joke. Just like there's this thing called FOMO, fear of missing
Oh,
out.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
wonder if
yeah.
there's a FOMOphobia where there's
Oh, yeah.
a fear of missing out. But that's
Got
a
you.
completely other
Because it
concept.
because it
Yeah.
rhymes.
FOMOphobia. There's got to be a thing. I don't know. Because I don't want to fear missing out on anything. I want to know everything.
All right.
I just want to be okay with where I am, missing out on everything. Yeah, sorry about that. My brain just
No,
had a
that's fine. I just didn't get it at
Benjamism.
first, but now I
No,
do.
yeah, I hammered it out for you. I guess only time will tell because you say you have this orientation,
Hmm.
and yet there's a sacrifice that you're making in life to be in love with a man, be in a loving relationship with a man and loving
Hmm.
him and dedicating
Hmm.
yourself to him. And so there's this other part of you that is naturally attracted to women
Hmm.
that is in balance with this love of a man
Yeah.
who's in
But
love with himself as a woman.
I'm not deeply in love with another person right now. I'm only deeply in love with my husband, so I'm okay.
Hmm.
I didn't
So
like
monogamy
go
over,
accidentally fall in love. We
yeah.
were polyamorous before all of this exploration of
Hmm.
thinking, free thinking.
Was that the dumpster fire it's purported to be by moral authorities?
No, I don't think so. Not for us, but we were like careful because of my high sensitivity. So we were
Hmm.
proactive about being careful. Like I would say like if you're going to do something new that you haven't done before like with someone, like go out in public and hold their hand. Like let's like have me try to process it before you do it. Like just be like, oh, like I'm dating this person, we might potentially do XYZ. So then I would be like, oh, how do I feel about that? And then I would talk to him and be like, this is how I feel about it. Like, so this is how we can deal with it in a healthy way. And
Yeah.
he would like give me time to be like, I think I'm okay with it. I think I'm ready. I think we've processed it enough.
Okay.
So it was healthy for us because he was so conscientious and compassionate and caring and knew that I was extremely sensitive and that change is hard for me because I'm autistic. That's normal for an autistic person. And so, whenever any potential change might be coming up, I try to preemptively process it ahead of time. Like, what if this happens? Will I be okay? How will I be okay? Is there anything I need from him, like reassurance or
Hmm.
communication? And we would like process it all like way ahead of time, hopefully. I mean, there's always the like wild card, but we did a really good job. So it wasn't that upsetting. It was kind of awesome. It was kind of great. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know.
Is it a relief to be now monogamous? You don't have to worry about all that. You don't have to do all that processing.
Yeah, it's much simpler.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a load off. Like that was a lot of work to do emotionally and like with introspection and communication and staying on top of things and everything. And yeah, it's like a whole load off. Like I think it's good for my chronic illness to not have things to stress over. Like stress is
Yeah.
bad for a chronic illness. So
Yeah.
I like appreciate that like I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can feel the relief. I mean, I just like I can't. Yeah, I can't even imagine having to do that much processing just to live a
Yeah,
life.
yeah. It's like a way that our relationship, like, it's like trials and tribulations that our relationship went through where we became stronger together and more connected. But yeah, ultimately, like, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like I kind of grilled you a little bit. I hope you don't feel that way either. I hope you don't feel that way, but if you did, I understand because I was trying to ask some questions that I heard people coming into this conversation because I want to title it "So I Married an Autogynephile," but I don't know if I'll do that.
You
Um,
can, yes.
so I know there'll be some hard questions. I know you'll get some pushback for things, and I wanted to give you a chance to like just kind of present your point of view. So I hope I didn't make you
No,
feel under
yeah,
pressure.
I'm really glad that I was asked all those things and able to express them. And I hope that people care that I shared that stuff. Yeah.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
so it sounds like you're focusing right now on your health and dirt. But what about your
The dirt is just for fun.
okay, yeah. What about your intellectual pursuits? What about like going forward? What do you want to be doing? You said something about recording a show where you shouldn't. Like, well, you were trying to get some pictures of a seal or something, and the zookeeper came out. I don't know. Like, you presented this situation where you were in a camera at the wrong place in the wrong time, but it makes me wonder if
Oh
you're
yeah, we
into.
were just at a concert and someone was like, I was taking like a 10-second video so I could remember what it was like. And the guy came over like, you can't do that. And I was
Okay.
like, oh my God, it was a 10-second video, but okay.
Yeah.
And then I got really
Yeah.
upset because I was having a bad day and I was like, this is an irrational reaction. I can't help
Yeah.
being emotional. I hate this,
Yeah.
but like I don't hate it. It's okay.
Okay.
Just accept it. Like it was a lot to go through for like no reason, just because
For a
I
ten
am how I
second.
am.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering, like, do you want to do like multimedia stuff? Do you want to write? Do you want to do more speaking things like this? Are you guys exploring like maybe uh, doing a mutual podcast together where you guys can talk through things like this? What do you think?
Yeah, I might start a YouTube channel with my high sensitivity. I've had to sort of gauge like how it is best for me to interact on the internet because I started out with high sensitivity, like thin skin or whatever, but I've gotten to a
Is
place
that the
where
technical word for
yeah,
it? Thin
yeah.
skinned person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've gotten to a place where like I can laugh off almost anything that anyone comments on something because I've been tweeting and
Mm.
so like whenever someone says something that seems incoherent or rude, I'll just be like, all right, cool. And like either do whatever I want, like hide it or block them or whatever. Like I let myself block people like for just them being rude, like instead of
Mm.
being constructive or
Mm.
inquisitive. If they're rude,
Mm.
I'll just be like, all right, blocked. Like, because like I'm putting my needs first. But like also like sometimes it's funny how like wild people's like mean comments are and how like far off base too. Like they think they make assumptions about you and then say mean things. And I'll be like, that's not even me that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
I think I'm able to handle it now. So I might start a YouTube because Ray has his YouTube channel. So I might start one.
Yeah. What would you cover?
All this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of this stuff. Ray and I did one video on his YouTube where he has a published book about being trans and his thoughts on it philosophically and stuff like that. So we started going through it chunk by chunk, but we only did one video. So maybe I'll do more of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe just a lot of talking about my thoughts on all this stuff. Like uh, trying to become a more free thinker and all these questions that have come up that I've never confronted before because I never thought like I should. Like I was always like, I should be like sex positive. I should think porn is okay. I should, all these things. I should this, I should that.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, should I? Maybe I should ask. Maybe I should think about it more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like there's just so many interesting YouTube channels out there. I was just watching A Special Place in Hell, Megan Dom and Sarah Hayter.
Hmm.
I noticed they only have like 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. I was shocked. Like and Megan Dom also does like The Unspeakable as another
Yeah.
channel.
Yeah.
It's so good. Like they both come from the left, but they were talking about all these things. Like they're open to being like, like thought criminal y or something. Like
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff they said, even in just this one episode I was listening to the other day, I was like, oh my God, I didn't consider whether I agree with that perspective ever before. I need to look into
Mm.
it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
love that. That's kind of the process I'm going through right
Oh,
now.
wow.
Like
Yeah.
considering perspectives that I never felt open to before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And that's part and parcel of being a curious person.
yeah. Yeah.
You're engaging with the world,
Yeah.
becoming an intellectual, and then maybe you'll even be a public intellectual. I guess you are now that you're on
Perhaps.
my show. So
Perhaps. Yeah. Made it big.
it's de facto, yeah. Well, not Jordan Peterson big, but
Yeah.
baby steps, baby
Jordan
steps.
Peterson's one of the people, he was like the big kerfuffle over him was because he didn't want to use like trans preferred pronouns, right? So,
Compulsed. He doesn't want to. You don't want to be
yeah, he
compelled
didn't want to
to.
have
Yeah.
to do it. Yeah. Yeah. So he's one of the people I was told, like, just don't listen to what he has to say. He's a bad person. And so I just was like, okay, I don't like him.
Yeah.
And now we both listen to him, and when I hear him do interviews and he talks about like, because he's a psychologist, he'll talk about like biological, psychological influences on how a female is like, influenced to behave based on their biology and what it's telling her, like what it's naturally inclined to do, and how
Yeah.
a male is. And I'm like, oh, I'm so much more open to that now. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
he's stereotyping. I think he's telling me about like science.
Yeah. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Well, Jules, thank you very much for carving out time and letting me have you on. It's really important to hear your story in and of itself, but also paired with Ray. You guys are more than the sum of your parts. Like your two stories like really work together, and
Yeah.
it's really interesting and refreshing to see that you guys are really a dynamic couple. Like you're really honest and working through stuff together, and that's just such a
Yeah.
refreshing and white pilly kind of thing. Like people can work together, we can be together,
Yeah.
despite our differences, and through
Yeah.
them, like. So I do hope to have you guys on together at some point.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds
Can I
good.
ask one more question?
Hmm.
Who's making dinner tonight, and what will it be at your
Ray
house?
almost always cooks.
Oh,
See, he's
yeah.
not a narcissistic person. He's
Well, I don't know. Are you
self-sacrificial.
saying that chefs aren't narcissistic? What are you talking
Oh.
about?
No, he cooks like it is self-sacrificial of him because my chronic illness and my autism and my sensory issues, it's hard for me to cook.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to learn a new thing, even though I know I could learn it, like I have a barrier to that. Like it feels like change, which is hard for me. And I'm so detail oriented and perfectionist. So all of that like makes it hard for me to do my chronic illness diet perfectly. So he'll literally go cook what I need. Like
Oh, wow.
he's taking on this role to help me with my health. Like he's such a good person. Like all the people that hate on AGPs, I'm like, well, you're not hating on my husband because that's an inaccurate picture.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you don't know what it's going to be. He's going to surprise you with your chronic illness food.
I mostly have to eat meat right now. I used to
Oh,
be a
wow, okay.
vegetarian a long time ago, but yeah, I
Oh, right
mostly
on.
have to eat meat lately, like
What's your
poultry
favorite-
and salmon and stuff.
What's your favorite meat?
He makes a good steak, a really
Yeah.
good steak.
Yeah. It's about getting time for me to bust out the smoker. I love doing the smoky stuff.
Nice.
Getting that up and running again. I love
Nice.
me a slab of meat.
Nice.
Well, what part of the country are you guys in?
Midwest.
Oh, okay. All right. So maybe we'll visit. Maybe we'll meet in person. Maybe not, and we can exchange steaks. That'd be fun too.
Yeah, yeah.
But thank you very much for coming on, and tell Ray hi again, and we'll set up something where we can all talk at the same time.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad that you and hopefully other people are interested in my story and Ray's story and our story
Yeah,
together. So
absolutely. My
I hope it
pleasure.
makes an impact.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right,
All
thanks.
right. Have a good
Bye.
night there,
You too.
Julie.
You
All right.
too.
Ciao.